Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Live Free Now show. I am your host, John Bush, where every week on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central, we bring you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free and prosperous life. That's right, my friends. We are pursuing freedom, prosperity, purpose, and working together to create a life of our dreams. There's a lot of struggle in this world, a lot of hardship, a lot of tyranny, but we are going to get through it together by staying positive, by aligning with our purpose and our principles, and by living our best life. That's right, my friends. Well, I wanted to share with you some topics that we're going to cover on the program. We're going to be talking about Palantir. That's the AI surveillance company founded by Peter Thiel that's played a major role in the Gaza genocide, in all sorts of military-industrial complex nonsense and chicanery. We're going to be talking about Palantir and their recent partnership with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, which is all about reducing bureaucracy, replacing it with technocracy. Well, they are partnered up in order to make the IRS more efficient in its surveillance capabilities. That's right. We're going to talk about that, break all that down. We're also going to talk about the real ID. The real ID, my friends. This is something that I've been aware of since it came out in 2005. A lot of people are just now hearing about it. Kristi Noem, of course, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, who was great on COVID, but she's a total authoritarian. She recently released a video talking about real ID compliance. We're going to talk about the real ID, digital ID, what we can do about it, what could have been done about it, but was not. We're going to talk about the private realm as well. The private realm, this idea that we can operate outside of the public realm, jurisdiction, man-made law, into divine law, God's law. We just wrapped up the No Tax Day webinar. You can still access the replay, actually. livefree.academy/no-tax. livefree.academy/no-tax if you want to check it out. Bradley and I just crushed this webinar yesterday. And then, my friends, we're also going to answer a question of the week. There's going to be some recurring segments that we do on the program. In fact, we're rethinking the program and how things go with the show, in case you didn't know. But we're going to be doing a question of the week segment. I got one about land, and aren't they just going to take our land? I want to hit that. And then, of course, we're going to be joined by Nicole Sauce in the second half of the program. Nicole Sauce of Living Free in Tennessee. She is going to be speaking at the X and Build Land Summit number 5, which is taking place at Polyface Farm in Swoop, Virginia. Always excited to be doing the Land Summit, especially when it's at Joel Salatin's homestead and farm, which is pretty cool. I do want to share, in case you hadn't noticed, I'd show the other camera, but that camera is blocked by the TV. Usually there's a gentleman sitting next to me doing the show along with me, but unexpectedly, Ryan departed not only from the show, but also from Live Free Academy. So we want to bid him well wishes and nothing but the best. But Ryan is no longer with the company or with the show. He is moving on, and that may come as a surprise to some of you, especially if you've been with Live Free Academy for a while. Came as a surprise to me, but it is what it is, and we shall carry on nonetheless. All righty. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into some news, my friends. I'm going to cover all this stuff in the next 25 minutes or so before we're joined by Nicole Sauce. But this is the article here, and you actually have to go to this archive page. Oh boy, is this not even the archive page? So Doge is planning this hackathon. Sorry, Palantir is planning a hackathon with Doge. And essentially, here's the article here. The article, let's go ahead and share that article for you guys. So Palantir, as I shared, is this big tech company. And essentially what they are doing is collaborating with the Department of Government Efficiency in order to make the IRS record system interoperable with other government agencies, like a whole mega they call it a mega API, right? So what's API? What does it even stand for? I don't know what it stands for, but essentially it's like a system that a program or a piece of software utilizes in order to integrate and interoperate with other programs. So information in one system can be transferred, can be input, can be utilized with another system. And let me see if this article actually gives us the whole thing. Here we go. So Palantir, the software company co-founded by Peter Thiel, is part of an effort by Elon Musk's so-called Doge to build a new mega API for accessing Internal Revenue Service records, the IRS sources told Wired. For the past 3 days, Doge and a handful of Palantir representatives, along with dozens of career IRS engineers, have been collaborating to build a single API layer above all IRS databases at an event previously characterized to Wired as a hackathon. I learned about hackathons in the crypto world. It's basically when, a bunch of computer software engineers get together and developers, and they work on projects together. And sometimes there's competitions. But it looks like they're getting together essentially to make the IRS more effective and efficient at data mining, at analyzing. APIs are application programming interfaces, that's what it stands for, which enable different applications to exchange data and can be used to move IRS data to the cloud and access it there. Doge has expressed an interest in the API project, possibly touching all IRS data, which includes taxpayer names, addresses, social security numbers, tax returns, and employment data. The IRS API layer could also allow someone to compare IRS data against interoperable data sets from other agencies. Wouldn't you know it, my friends? You see, essentially what they're aiming to do, and they're even going to use this, what does it say? Audit. Let me see. There's something in here about audit, being able to more effectively administer their audits. You see, this would be interoperable with other databases, both private and public, making it easier for the Internal Revenue Service to cross-reference your tax return, for example, with your bank account, with your social media posts, with your cryptocurrency purchases. If you're purchasing through a centralized exchange and they're turning over data to the government. It's a huge concern. And I just got to say, I'm not a big I told you so guy. I am a big I told you so guy up here in my mind, but I don't like to communicate it because I don't like to be catty or crass to people. But, we did call out Donald Trump during the election and before, and communicated that it was our expectation that Donald Trump is going to dramatically accelerate technocracy. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what is happening. Campaign promises were made to abolish the IRS, but instead it appears as though Donald Trump and his presidency are going to be upgrading the IRS dramatically. So it remains to be seen how far this goes. But rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, this will take the IRS's surveillance capabilities to the next level. Now, if you read the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency executive order, it specifically stated that part of the purpose was to upgrade the computer information systems of the federal government. And so people may say that's a positive thing, but in all reality, as libertarians, as people that care about freedom, we should want the government to be as inefficient and ineffective and clunky and old as possible. Now, we got to reduce expenses and spending. It's a whole lot of nonsense when you consider that the government just creates money out of thin air, not to mention after the Doge initiative has allegedly uncovered all this fraud and waste, the budget is the same or higher because a lot of the money allegedly saved, is being shifted into the Department of Defense budget. It's a giant fugazi, a total scam, and it leads me to believe and to reiterate, my friends, that nobody's coming to save you. Don't trust politicians. This is all a modernization effort to enable the federal government's systems and databases and networks to more effectively integrate artificial intelligence. This just so happens to coincide and work alongside Operation Stargate, which is this $500 billion initiative from OpenAI and what's that data? Oracle, Larry Ellison, who once talked about like surveillance panopticon society that has people questioning that they're being watched so they can change their behavior. They're creating this massive Stargate project in order to create massive computing data centers for the AI systems to have enough power to take data from a vast variety of sources. This is what smart cities are all about. This is what the 5G internet infrastructure upgrade is all about. Collect and consume as much information, couple it with the computing power to analyze algorithmically with the assistance of artificial intelligence in order to create a panopticon society that's not just aware of things, but leverages that awareness, that total information awareness. If you're familiar with the DARPA project, the Department of Defense Advanced Research Project Agency from John Poindexter early in the 2000s, it got, people say that it was abolished or removed, but it likely just got brought into the private sector. Perhaps it shifted into Palantir and other companies like that. It's an effort to be able to take this information and make this information useful. That was one of the key problems that was recognized early on in this effort to create a panopticon total surveillance society. What would we even do with the amount of data that we collect? We don't have the computing power or the capacity to make sense of it all. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with the advent of artificial intelligence, with the Trump administration and Project Stargate working together in order to increase the processing power of these systems, we are very quickly approaching an environment where it is likely that this data will be utilized in order to socially engineer the public. And of course, it'll all tie in with a digital ID. I've always talked about the 4 horsemen of technocracy: digital ID, central bank digital currencies, vaccine passport, which vaccines were just the first use case for this technology, which is mostly about controlling people's freedom of movement and not allowing them to access certain areas based on certain criteria if they're vaccinated, if they've exceeded their carbon allotment for the period. And then, of course, the social credit score. The social credit score is linked in with all this massive data and information and what you're posting and what you're speaking and how much you're polluting and what the hell ever. And now we couple this because you got to be able to track it and tie all of this data to an individual person. That's where the digital ID comes in. Digital IDs are already being pushed. There's already ID.me. I don't know if you're a taxpayer or if you've navigated your way out of that nonsense yet, but last time I wanted to go look and see what's going on with my filings and all this, that, and the other. In order to actually access that system, you got to set up a ID.me digital ID. So of course I didn't. I'd rather spend a little extra money with the CPA and put the pressure on him to go check out the filings and tap into all that stuff with the power of attorney nonsense. But guys, this is happening. It's happening now, and it's being accelerated. Let's check out this fuss that's all being made about Kristi Noem, Real ID. Now, a lot of people just woke up, right, after COVID. They're like, what the hell's going on? But, you know, some of us, we've been in the game for a while, and I knew about the Real ID for quite some time. In fact, there were these awesome efforts back in the late 2000s to nullify the Real ID Act, nullification through the 10th Amendment, which says that those powers not expressly delegated to the federal government are reserved for the states and the people, right? So then if the federal government tries to push forward some kind of act through Congress or even the presidency, and it's not a power specifically enumerated in the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, all the powers of the Congress, then the states can interpose or nullify it. It's something that Thomas Jefferson iterated, and it was first utilized to nullify the Alien and Seditions Act, which would have made it illegal to speak ill of the president way early on in the republic's founding, the former republic. Was it ever really a republic? Probably not. So let's go ahead and give this Kristi Noem a listen and see what she has to say about the Real ID, and then I'll continue to break it down. But fear not, guys, this isn't like a fear show, conspiracy, cover it all. This is a solution show. But sometimes you got to crack people open to get them to realize that they've been lied to and they're being led down a path of tyranny desperation and despair. The power lies within each and every one of us. And until we realize that, we're going to keep repeating the cycle of nonsense and violence and confusion. All right, so let's hear what Kristi Noem has to say about the Real ID, digital ID, national ID card.
Hi, I'm Kristi Noem, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. If you plan on traveling, we need your help to prevent delays and to prove your identity. Get a Real ID. Starting May 7th, you will need a Real ID to travel by air or to visit federal buildings in the United States. These IDs keep our country safe because they help prevent fraud and they enhance security. Please do your part to protect our country. Go today and don't delay. To learn more, go to dhs.gov/real-ID. Thank you.
Oh, Kristi. Oh, Kristi. Go today and don't delay. Boy, that was some clever marketing that you guys came up with there. Isn't it creepy too? Like the Department of Homeland Security, just that imagery and that concept, the Department of Homeland Security. I remember back in my day before there was a Department of Homeland Security, I tell you what, and I was awake and aware of this conspiracy when it was created, fully knowing that they're implementing a Gestapo thing. But then all these conservatives are all foolishly just lapping up Trump's nonsense, not understanding, not comprehending that it's simply continuing the tyranny of presidents past. And they love the power and love the authority. Well, I got news for a lot of people. Unfortunately, a lot of people are like, oh my God, the Real ID, digital ID, what do we do? What do we do? But chances are, if you've renewed your state driver's license in the past 3 or 4 years, unless you're in just a small number of states that are lagging behind to catch up with Real ID, not by some sort of rebellion against the federal authoritarian order, not by any means, probably because they can't get their data systems upgraded. Thankfully, Doge is on the survival on the scene. But if you in Texas, if you got this little star, see that star there right here, there's a gold star. Doot, doot, doot. That means that your ID is Real ID compliant. So mine is, and that's unfortunate. I remember resisting the driver's license, getting it renewed and trying to exercise my sovereign right to trial. Then I got 5 tickets, got pulled over more times than I could count, 5 guilty verdicts, started getting pulled over when I had my kids in the car and arguing with the cops, which was uncomfortable for them. So I decided I'm just going to play along. But I remember when I first went in to renew my ID, I don't know, it's maybe 10 years ago or so, I had both of my kids with me, and all of a sudden they used to just get your thumbprints. Now they wanted all 10 fingers. So I resisted. I said, no, I need to speak to a supervisor. Is this the law? Show me the law. Sure enough, it was the law, or at least I didn't have the time to study it. And I left. I didn't want to, not that it freaking mattered, but I was like, I'm not going to let my kids see me voluntarily subject myself to this tyranny and surveillance. So I took them home and came back a week later and submitted. So here, what does this mean? The Real ID, essentially, it's interoperable data. Instead of having 50 unique driver's license government identification systems, they're all now share common data practices so as to be able to centralize that information in an easier way. Health records, all this stuff being tied to this digital ID. So it's here. You can still fly without a passport, but chances are once every single state is fully compliant, as a large majority of them already are and have been for quite some time, hence the gold star. If you want to have a driver's license, which you don't need really, I mean, a lot of times it's just a slap on the wrist to avoid the driver's license, then you're going to be getting the Real ID. What does it mean? Does it mean you're a slave? Practically speaking, it doesn't make much of a difference. Many of us are already not full on, but pretty damn enslaved by various means. Like, we're scoffing at the Real ID when most of us carry around an Android phone. You can get yourself an above phone and this won't matter to you, but we're carrying around these little listening devices where the big tech, which is now deeply integrated with government, has been for a while, can listen to everything we say, serve us up advertisements, go beyond that, track, trace, record our every movement through Google Maps. So if everyone's scoffing at Real ID just because it's been put out in front of you, and it's the thing to think about and to whine about now. But in all reality, we need to be taking bigger steps. Real ID isn't the problem. The problem is dependency on centralized systems. And to take it even a step deeper, which I'll introduce and segue to our next segment, the problem really is that we have forgotten who we are and how powerful we really are, and how sovereign we are. It's been socially engineered out of us. It's been bred out of us. It's been programmed out of us. And my friends, I think it's time we remember who we are. And with that, I want to introduce our question of the week. This is a segment that I'll do from time to time here on the Live Free Academy show. Thank you, by the way, to everybody that shows up live. Oh, there's my girl, Christy. Thank you to everybody that shows up live for the program. We are grateful that you are here. We appreciate you. We always want to shout you out because I like doing the show live. I've contemplated breaking it down where I just record these segments and then we just release them, and they're a little more polished and clever headlines and nice thumbnails and stuff. But I tell you what, I like doing stuff live. So if you like the live show, I'm talking to you, Catherine Martin, a super fan who always shows up, and I always appreciate, because sometimes if we don't promote it or put it out on our email list, which is our most effective way of reaching people, not a whole lot of people show up, but I can always count on Catherine Martin and often my lovely wife, Rebecca, to be there watching along. So I want to shout out everybody that's tuned in live. I think we'll probably figure out a way to keep going live. We'll just keep it live, keep rocking and rolling. That'll force me to actually do it every week. And I do enjoy it, I tell you what. Okay, so here's the question of the week. And we got Nicole Sauce waiting in the wings. We'll be going to her shortly. She'll be speaking at the Exit and Build Land Summit 5. So here's the question of the week. And we could get Nicole's take on this question as well. But so we've been promoting the Trinity Law Method Masterclass, right, my friends? And it's all about leveraging a non-statutory trust, a private membership association, and a 508c1a faith-based organization. Ours, we refer to it as a ministry of nature. It's called Freedom Family Fellowship. These strategies are being utilized by various people. We've been promoting it. We just did this awesome webinar. You can still catch the replay at livefree.academy/no-tax. But I got a question in response to one of our emails about this. And the email topic was, will this actually work for me? And this woman says, hello, here is a very real question. One big part of the agenda is that they will abolish land ownership. How do we get around that? And the first thing that always rises up for me when this question is brought up, it's like, oh, okay, so you're worried that they're going to abolish land ownership, therefore you're just not going to own land at all. So the very thing that you're worried about, they're going to abolish land ownership, which means we'll have to rent, or we'll have to live in the city or in an apartment. We'll own nothing and be happy. Chances are, if you're asking this question, you probably are already living in the city or in an apartment and not owning land. And so it's like, wait a second. Are you just going to go ahead and give them the victory without even trying because part of the agenda is to abolish land ownership? And what agenda are you even talking about? Of course, we have Agenda 21, the 2030 agenda, the communist agenda as iterated in the Communist Manifesto is no private property ownership, right? But who's to say that they are going to be successful in their agenda? Not to mention, if you do not move forward and if you have a desire to own land, if what we've been sharing with the Exit and Build Land Summit stuff, if the Nicoles of the world talking about the value of homesteading and building community is speaking to you and it's something that you desire, yet you don't move forward because you think part of their agenda is they'll abolish land ownership, then in many ways they have already won and they've already abolished land ownership for you in your mind. So this just brings me back to encouraging people in our community to step out of victimhood and into empowerment. One way to be more empowered and to increase the chances that something like abolishing land ownership has no chance in hell of actually happening is to get yourself to a rural conservative area like Bastrop, Texas, or small town Tennessee, perhaps, where there are so many people and they're not like agorists and conspiracy researchers against the New World Order. They're just good old boys and they like their land and they grew up on the land and they were passed on a ranch from their father and their grandfather. And there's a rich history of land ownership and stewardship. There's also a rich history of rugged individualism and an adoration for firearms. And I tell you what, my friends, in a place like Bastrop County, and Bastrop County isn't even as conservative as you can get the further away you get from major cities, there's nobody that's going to give up their land. Nobody's given up their land. And I tell you what, I think about my neighbor often, an old patriot, former military veteran, big Trump MAGA guy, total sweetheart, him and his wife. They're quite up there in age. And when I think about people coming blue helmets or the World Economic Forum, first of all, the sheriff's department in these small towns, their kids play baseball together. Their families were raised together in most instances, unlike a big city where they import the police officers often from the surrounding communities. These people aren't going to come door to door kicking you off of your land. They're your friends. They're your community, especially if you're a good pillar in the community. And so I think about often my old timer neighbor, and I bet like there's people in this world, more and more myself included, like I still want to have some great years on this earth, of course. And I got kids and want to have a family and just want to spend time and grandkids and stuff. And I enjoy life. But there's people that would find it to be glorious, would bask in the glory of dying, defending their land. You know what I'm saying? And oftentimes I think these kind of objections that arise in people are more about a quiet, limiting belief within them that says, we recognize that you'd love to own land, but you're terrible with money. This is them speaking to themselves. You're terrible with money. You can barely afford rent. You hear John Bush talking about buying land, and it feels like something that would be so amazing, but you'll never be able to pull it off. So rather than face the discomfort that you suck at money and you got to get your shit together, it's easier to say, they'll just take the land. They'll just abolish the land. So there's no use in moving forward. Same thing happens with cryptocurrency. We need to learn cryptocurrency, decentralized private crypto, because the CBDC system is coming and we got to be able to trade outside of it. And the people are like, but they'll shut it down and they'll ban crypto. That's just also a way of managing the discomfort that comes with it's hard to learn new things, especially if you're an old timer. So just want to throw that out there, guys. I want to encourage people to overcome limiting beliefs. I want to encourage people to step out of victimhood and be empowered and recognize that many people do own land. And I tell you what, we're connected with other people that own land, and we're in conservative rural areas, and it's highly unlikely anybody's marching in to take the land. But let's get right with God, and let's recognize that there's a separation between our spiritual selves and our physical selves. And at the end of the day, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And how do you want to live on your knees? Do you want to live on your knees or die on your feet, right? Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to go out guns a-blazing. That's not our style here on the program. But I also don't want to lay down and allow some tyrant to take our land, which in the first place, I believe to be highly unlikely in special places like Texas and Tennessee. All right. Our good friend Nicole's been patiently waiting as I rant and rave. She's somebody that owns land and is well-versed in this space. Let's get her take as we bring her up. Nicole, how are you today? And what are you thinking about when that question comes up? What if they'll abolish land? How do we get around that?
I think we don't worry about it and we build the life we want.
Now we're talking.
Because if you worry about that and you let it stop you, you are playing into exactly what they want you to do. And that means they win. And that means you'll never have land. Why not have land now so you have something to defend and a community to defend it with if a time comes when they take it? In some ways, we don't own land because we pay property taxes on it. And those taxes go up and it makes it harder and harder to keep your land. But I'm not going to let that stop me from owning my homestead outright, which I paid it off in September. So
congrats.
Yeah, totally different budget in my life now. It's amazing how like that little amount of money like tripled in amount when I didn't have to pay it anymore.
Wow. When did you buy
Yeah.
it? Not that
I
long ago.
07 I started,
Oh, good for
and I
you.
accidentally paid it off faster than I intended because my mortgage got down to I'm good. My mortgage got down to below principal, below my monthly payment, and then you have to pay everything off. So I had to come up with a big lump sum of money because I had a big escrow account for insurance and whatnot. And I was like, I don't have that. And then I was like, yes, I do, because I started this other side business and I've just ignored that account balance for years. And I was like, oh, it's in there. So I
All
paid it
right.
off and I was like, sweet.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. Well, we haven't chatted in a while or had you on the program. So why don't you first just introduce yourself to folks that are watching that may not be familiar with your work? And then I'd love to dive into what you've been up to lately and how things are going there in Tennessee.
I'm Nicole Sauce from Hollow Roast Coffee and the Living Free in Tennessee podcast. We have just launched a new podcast called the Living Free podcast, which is our Wednesday show syndicated out. So that's a whole new adventure that we're going on. But I just love freedom. I've wanted to help people build freedom into their lives and choose freedom and stop letting limiting beliefs, as you call them, keep you from moving forward. That's it. And that's what we do here. We do homesteading classes. I believe that if you can build value from your land, you're in a much more stable position. And as you get your community around you, which you can do by going to Exit and Build Land Summit, by the way, you'll meet people who are all having a similar desire and you'll have time to talk to them. That's what we need to do. We need to stop participating in the programming that's out there and program ourselves the way we want to be, not the way they tell us to be. That's who Nicole Sauce is.
Yeah, I ran out to turn on the AC for the first part of that intro because I know you in your story. But you said you have a show that you're going to be doing syndication for now. What was that piece?
So I've always done 3 shows a week, and I've always sort of people don't listen to Living Free in Tennessee because they're not from Tennessee. So that's been like a marketing mistake that Nicole Sauce made almost 10 years ago now. And, you know, once people start listening to the podcast, they realize it's not necessarily just about Tennessee. So I decided my interview show, which is a lot about people's story about building freedom into their lives. Like I just interviewed somebody today who has a really great source of water. They're bottling and selling the water now. So it's bottled water that's not dead.
Wow.
That you can buy at the store in Tennessee. And it's a very local business, but they had to realize, they had this like they knew that the water was an asset because they used it. Mm-hmm. And they had to realize that not only that they could share it with other people. And they're building a whole alternative business structure that's really supporting their mission in life, which is supporting other families and building their community and keeping it local. And they have a book club they do with employees who, you know, once a month they take them out to lunch and talk about a book they've read rather than putting water in bottles, right? So that's an interesting whole other side thing. And they're building it the way they think a business should be run. And they are also sustaining themselves off income from their homestead. So I really was like, you know, that Wednesday show, while it fits my overall theme, could be called the Living Free podcast. And then I can offer it, then I'll syndicate it on Living Free in Tennessee, and I can start offering it to other people. So I'm just at the beginning, like, phase of starting. It's like episode 5. Cool. Yeah. So, you know, and that idea came to me a year ago. It took me a whole year to execute on it.
Yeah, that's often a struggle. We have ideas. I guess the challenge is we have so many ideas, and we got to like, which idea am I actually going to execute upon? Which is it's a blessing and a curse. So, well, that's awesome. And so if you're just joining us, friends, we're talking to Nicole Sauce of Living Free in Tennessee and the Living Free podcast, and Hollow Roast Coffee. Hey, get this. We've been using, Keurig, and there's these organic pods that we buy on Amazon, right? Did buy some Nicole Sauce hollow roast ones in the past. I didn't reorder. They were great. That's not why I didn't reorder. It's just a convenience habit thing with the Amazon. But then we ran out of those. And no, actually our Keurig machine, it's an actual Keurig brand. It failed and I couldn't fix it. Tried to clean it, do the whole running the vinegar stuff through it. Either way, so we went back to the grounds in a different coffee maker, and I dug out an old dark roast, holler roast from the last land summit. It was still good, still tasted great. So I'm back on the holler roast coffee, and I'm going to place an order with you because I went through a couple different ones, and then I found that one, and the taste was far superior, even though it was like a year old.
I feel like in about 3 weeks you're getting a host gift now.
All right. Now we're talking.
What kind of coffee maker are you using?
It's I don't know. It has one of those
like a drip
mesh. Yeah, it's drip. It's drip.
Yeah. I know because Jack's been like pimping out the AeroPress, and those make a cup at a time.
Oh, sure.
But those are pretty good too.
If I was patient enough and not such a caffeine addict, I would do a French press because it makes a superior coffee, I think. But I don't have the patience in the morning to wait for it to brew. Maybe that's something I got to work on. Anyway, okay. If you're just joining us, Nicole is going to be speaking at the X and Build Land Summit number 5, which is taking place at Polyface Farms, Joel Salatin's place in Swoop, Virginia. How cool is that? And the theme for the event is to make as much as you can as far as homesteading and fruit from your land. It's how to monetize your land and then how to leave a legacy. And Nicole's somebody that's working on all 3 of those things, but she has a really extra special expertise when it comes to monetizing the land, entrepreneurship. And of course, what's really important to me, more so than the tactics and the mechanics of how do I start a business, how do I start a side hustle, is overcoming those limiting beliefs. And I've called Nicole the female Tony Robbins for the homesteading movement, which is great because she has a great talk and it's all, about limiting beliefs and such. But tell us, what can we expect from your talk for folks that are going to be joining us there in Swoop? What do you plan to hit on there?
I am going to hit on getting over your limiting beliefs of not being able to make money on your homestead. And the biggest one is homesteaders tend to go in with a subsistence living mindset. And so having Exit and Build Land Summit at Polyface is the best foundation to set, because Joel Salatin's story is that his parents worked full-time jobs, and then he took their best practices from raising regenerative, truly organic food, figured out how to make that profitable, and then shared that message with the world so other farmers can have ethical, organic, sustainable, regenerative practices and make money. And it's okay to make money. The mindset that gets in the way of homesteaders doing that is that they think it's unfair to charge a reasonable price for what they're doing, A, and B, there's an I can't problem. And the I can't problem we're be taking on, not just through exploring my story in finding hollow roast as my primary homestead income, but also by looking at other homesteaders like the one I just referenced, who is now turning water into money, right? And part of living free and building a life without limits is having the economic capital to do that, whether it be US dollars or Bitcoin or Monero or things you can barter. Or community capital is a big one. All of those things play together, and it's not dirty or evil to make money from what you're doing so that you can keep doing what you're doing. So we're going to be hitting that. I'm going to hit a lot of different examples from different homesteads to get you thinking, what do I have of value that maybe somebody hasn't thought of? Or what do I have value that's in one of Nicole's examples, so that you can take your next step? Because really the most important thing is to start. That's what we're going to be talking about at Polyface.
Nice. Yeah. Experience is the greatest teacher. And be careful if you're in the audience, because Nicole likes to get the audience involved, which is really effective. Yeah, it's the Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And a lot of people just lack that belief in themselves, I think, is what it comes down to, and maybe a fear of failing. But it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to experiment and try, because you learn so much and gain so much from that. let me ask you this for my own personal insight, some advice. So, of course, we have a 10-acre homestead and a fledgling community that's in flux right now, but we're not giving up on the dream. But there's a lot of changes happening, a lot of adversity too, which is a great teaching opportunity. But we want to monetize our homestead more. We do our Ministry of Nature activities and host these events and workshops. They're not super profitable. In fact, they're not profitable at all. They do generate some revenue, but we're feeding people and stuff. So we need to fine tune that. But my wife, Rebecca, who might be watching, has aspirations to like sell stuff from the land. And of course, we have our hands full. We have all sorts of endeavors. It'd be a whole different story if it was the only thing that we were doing. But it's my belief, and maybe this is a limiting belief, that with many different things that you can grow on your property, from vegetables to herbs, we have yopon growing like crazy on our property, yopon tea or whatever. In order to not only manufacture and produce that potential product and then package, market, sell, customer service, follow-up, mailing, in-person exchange, my entrepreneurial mind, I'm somebody that seeks out low input activity, which produces a high output, less activity, less resource, producing higher profit, higher money. So when it comes to growing or producing something on the land and selling it, are you with me on that general assessment, or are there certain things or certain strategies that can break free of that? And it's not going to take a whole lot of energy and resources in order to turn a profit. What are your thoughts on that front?
It depends entirely on what you're talking about on your homestead. I think you do have some limiting belief in there, and you need to be open to what can generate a profit on your homestead and how can you set it up to not take all of those steps you just described. So is there, like the yopon, for example, like, are you ready to launch a tea product line? Do you have the infrastructure to package dried plant material, for example, and get it into an existing system to connect people with the only naturally occurring caffeinated plant in North America?
Wow.
Right. Which is, and then there's a whole story you can tell about that. And then your only challenge at that point is harvest and drying, which if you can find somebody who's already doing that to work with, then you and Rebecca don't have to do that footwork necessarily. Or as your community gets through its latest transition, which believe me, I understand those transitions, you can maybe somebody comes in who has a passion about that. Or can you figure out the monetary impact of different things that you are already producing from your homestead per piece, and somebody who's living there gets paid per piece, and first it offsets whatever their monthly contribution to the homestead is, and then from there they can build a business unit that creates value and reputation. And when you have that reputation, you can go further. So I think there are ways to do it, but any physical product is limited by the fact it's a physical product versus a digital product, as you know. Like you can record your Trinity webinar, and that both helps people and it can be sent to millions of people. Versus you only have so much yopon holly. It's yopon holly, right? On your homestead. I've tried to grow that here, man. I've always wanted it, have been unsuccessful to date.
It's like a nuisance. It grows so much and so easily here. So
the problem is the solution, right?
Yeah. I like that. It could be something I put my son up to participating in also. But what about, like, that's a beauty because it's already there in abundance. What about the energy to grow food? Let's just talk about run-of-the-mill vegetables, for example. And of course, it's a homestead business, but you're doing coffee, which people could do in a neighborhood as well, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be my homestead business, or the business that produces value for me at my home is growing food per se, gardening and vegetables, which a lot of people think farming is the only thing that you do on a homestead, or livestock, right? But when it does come to livestock and vegetables, what about this limiting belief too? Like, if I'm going to grow food, tomatoes, greens, whatever it may be, and then take it to market, I'm already competing with the big boys, other farms in the area that have established business and client, and probably are better at growing the food in more abundance than I am. And they have full-time jobs growing the food, and they've been doing it for 25 years. And I am coming in there's not a whole lot of profit in my view. Maybe that's a limiting belief. What do you say to that though, when it comes to like starting from scratch, growing vegetables or livestock? Are there any types of food, types of vegetables, types of animals that can be more profitable, less input, higher output?
Bastrop has a pretty robust local food movement. So I would look at what they have and what does well. And can you do a niche version of that? Because, niching down really helps you set the foundation for charging the kind of price. So if heirloom tomatoes are great, maybe you get the Brad's like silver colored one and you just know for this season. Or, Jack always talks about his buddy who raises bees to sell nukes and once a year makes $20,000 selling nukes over 2 weeks. So I would really look at what's out there already and definitely don't compromise on price. So, you can differentiate by price. You don't want to be in that boat because then you get into a price war. You want to differentiate on quality or uniqueness or the story of your community or whatever it is, how you present it so that it's easier for me to use. If I want to cook from scratch, I don't have to go through a bunch of extra processing to get the base product ready. The other thing I think of though, John, is that, and I didn't look for this in Bastrop, so I don't know if it's already exists. We have something here and it fits in with your Trinity really well. We have it's called the Farmer's Storehouse, and he's a PMA that is, you have a membership. So you can be a membership farm or a membership buyer or both. And I can take my regeneratively organically raised duck eggs there and get $10 a dozen. He marks it up to $12 to $15 a dozen for the people there. And it's just this central clearinghouse for all the local organically raised stuff. And his philosophy is my farmers have to make money and I have to make money. And you, the community, should support that if you want this kind of food locally. And then he does like, and you'd be really good at this. Like he does music shows and classes, and they've added a cafe that like serves coffee and pastries. They have a mill so you can get freshly ground flour, and it's turning into a hub. You've already got a good connection with your local community, so you could almost go that direction with it, make it profitable that way. However, it will be a lot of work. That's any of these ideas are going to take work. And, because you've started several successful businesses, that you need to decide which things are going to fit within your ability to do it as well as I know you can do things, and Rebecca can do things. So it is sort of like the reason I didn't start launching the Living Free podcast for a year is I had said yes to a lot of things and I didn't want to drop those balls, and there was no space. And then I had a family illness come in that had me commuting to California while running the businesses. And that was a little much. So then I was like, I got through that. And then I got through about a 4-month rest period. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to start rolling out this new podcast, which starts with talking about it. And then it has its own URL. And, it goes through all of the things of rolling out a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's some of the wisdom that we're coming to also. We have so many ambitions to do stuff, but we can't do it all. And then when we try to do it all, we crash and burn and ended up falling short of our own expectations and desires. And then we act out of integrity, which is a quick way to tarnish relationships. And so lately I've just been like, we're in like a hunker down phase where we've done so many different things and our ambitions kind of got the best of us. And now we're like, what has been working? What do we enjoy? Let's hunker down and build a strong foundation for those things before we start adding stories onto the home. We got to have a strong foundation or the whole thing's going to come crashing down. And I think that we've manifested some adversity in our lives precisely because we have been trying to do too much. So let me ask you this.
You and me both, buddy, by the way.
Well, there you go. These are, and this is the beauty of like self-analysis, of self-development, spiritual development. When you have this mindset, it helps you to navigate through this stuff instead of just buckling under the pressure. So let me ask you, because you've been in the game for a while, and I know you're somebody that learns from lessons, but it's like, we do a lot. and we're considered successful and leaders and such, but does the adversity ever stop or slow down for you, or does it have a tendency to increase because you're doing bigger things with more people? Because we're in a period of great adversity right now, and we're making the most of it and learning from it. But what are things like in Nicole's world from that, with people and setbacks and all that stuff? And most importantly, what kind of strategies do you use to recover and not let it just crash you and bring you down?
So there's always an emotional component when you have adversity in what you're doing. And I think anytime you're doing anything, you're going to have it. And it hurts more when you know it's your fault. Like somebody says something critical and you're like, I'm mad, but you're right. And now I'm going to go cry. Right. So that's the thing. And it's actually, I took a lesson from you, because you're really good when somebody gives you critical feedback. You're like, I'm going to own this, and this is what I'm doing to remedy it. Right. And then you do it. And I'm sure sometimes you get overwhelmed and maybe you don't do it all the way you wish you could, like that's, but that's natural. And if people you're working with can't understand that those things happen, do you really want to be working with them? So I sort of take the track of when somebody delivers, when there's adversity that's probably of my own making, I like to admit that there's adversity when I know about it, and say this, like, I apologize for this. I'm really sorry that I know that doesn't really help you. And this is what I'm doing to never do that again. If you ever want to work with me or whatever, interact with me, I'd really appreciate a second chance. But if not, like, no hard feelings. It's not going to be awkward when I see you. And then I move on and do my best. And so I'm not speaking at very many events this year. And so Exit and Build is one of the few.
All right.
Yeah. Because when I'm not on the homestead, half the homestead is gone, and that hurts here. And then I'm telling stories about successful homesteading, and it's a mess here. So it is not a mess here now. Well, there's one mess left right now, but it like that was all with Self-Reliance Festival going multiple times a year and blah, blah, blah. It was keeping me away from doing some of the things I loved most, which is this lifestyle. So I really, really pulled back after I got the slap in the face last year. And some people, like, there was a lot of people talking about me behind my back.
Oh. And
some of it was, some truth in there, but not real. Like, it was misunderstanding. And then it goes, he said, she said, telephone game completely changes whatever happened. And I decided, rather than engage with any of that, I would just say no to all speaking engagements for 6 months and hunker down on delivering the best I could with what I had already committed to. Sometimes it wasn't as good as I would have wanted to, but it was the best I could do, and evaluate where I'm best and where I'm lacking, and if I need to, like, outsource the lacking part, or if I need to address the lack, right? And a lot of the things where I've disappointed people have 100% to do with me wanting to say yes to everything. So I just said no. I mean, it was like, the first answer is no. And then maybe I'll say yes later when I realize it fits. So it's good you didn't ask me to speak till later in the year, by the way. I would have said no in January. But then some people were kind enough to tell me, I've had a couple in the last little bit, like, this thing disappointed me, and I'm not going to expose myself to that kind of disappointment again, but I wanted you to know. And then I would just thank them for that, apologize, and say, this is what we're doing differently, and learn from it. Because when somebody's willing to make themselves vulnerable to tell you that they don't like something, whether it's by yelling at you or by sending a more kindly worded email or having a conversation with you, that is the universe giving you the opportunity to build a stronger, less adversarial sort of community around you. And you really, I think, we're going to go through times like this again, John, where, like, you're in one right now. I'm sorry. If you ever need to talk about it, let me know, but, like, brainstorm. But yeah, you gotta power through it. You got to rhinoceros through and really look at those parts where you're like, wow, that hurts my feelings, which means there's some truth in it. So that means I need to change. And these are the changes I'm willing to make. And maybe I got here because I was doing something I didn't like to begin with. And that's also a really big lesson. Like when you find yourself really mad because you hate what you're doing, why are you doing that as an entrepreneur? You have complete control about how you build your life at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. Good stuff. Good wisdom, guys. Folks, if you're just joining us, Nicole is going to be sharing this wisdom, like the good stuff. This is what it's all about. Trust me, you're going to get plenty of how-tos and hands-on instruction from Joel and Daniel and others. But what I find to be the most valuable is these kind of discussions, like why are we not living up to our own potential? How can we take responsibility for everything around us? How can we have difficult conversations with people that we care about? And how can we learn from that? That's really what it's all about. And Nicole brings that very well. One of the best in the space when it comes to one of the few in the space. It's not that hard to be the best, in all honesty, because a lot of people are just teaching you step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's how to do this and that. But they're not like, as I teach this, a lot of people in the audience are likely thinking to themselves, I'm just going to mess this up. I'm going to check out now because I don't even think I have the confidence to make this happen. And Nicole's somebody that knows, that anticipates that because she's dealt with a lot of people and goes ahead and gives you some medicine to help you push through. So I always appreciate that. Either way,
I share a story before you move on. So
yeah, go ahead.
Sunday night at 11 o'clock, I was falling asleep. And Tactical, who lives on my property, went up to check on our last pregnant ewe.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in labor, and he said she's in labor, which is inconvenient at that time of day. And she's small. And she's my favorite sheep because I bottle raised her last year.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was very worried. And finally, I'm like, at first I'm like, I just want to go to sleep. And I'm like, no, I need to go up there and check. So he came, and we're like 16 acres, top of the steepest hill possible. So it's way out there. We're down a 4-wheeler right now. So I have to ride on the back of a 4-wheeler in the dark up the hill, which is a little frightening. And I didn't want to do that because I don't like steep hills on 4-wheelers anyway. And finally, I'm like, put your pants on, put your overalls on, bring everything you might need if there's an emergency, and go up there. And I went up there, and it ended up being a stuck delivery, and I had to pull the lamb. And I've only ever pulled lambs one other time, and they were stillborn. So I'd already had a pretty negative experience pulling lambs. And I was faced with a limiting belief of, I'm going to kill the sheep. I'm going to kill the lamb. She's my favorite sheep. Why do the ones I love the most always die? And I'm up there, by this time it was midnight, pulling a lamb. Sure, it's going to come out dead, and then I'm going to have to deal with an upset mom. I'm not sure I'm not going to kill the mom on the way out because it was very stuck. And I was complaining out loud in tears the whole time. Like Tactical's holding the lamb so she stays in place. And she's holding the ewe. I'm pulling the lamb, saying out loud all of my doubts while I did it. And all I remembered is like, what do I tell people to? Be fearless. And at the end of the day, they're all going to die if I don't pull this lamb, right? So I pulled the lamb, and the lamb lived, and the ewe lived, and they're all like fine. And had I let all of those doubts that I was vocalizing at the time stop me, then I would have never had the successful outcome. I would have had my favorite sheep dead in a horrific way. And that's exactly the same mindset that gets in your way when you're talking to yourself negatively about starting the next thing. And there's a fine line between I can't do this and actually market says in this area that that's not working great, so I need to focus on something else or do it in a different way. It's two different things. Like there's genuinely a time where you're like, actually, this thing I'm doing doesn't make money. So I'm going to go do the thing that does make money. Right.
Yep.
But
And it's good to not engage in the sunken cost fallacy if you put some time and money into something that's not making money to try to force it to work. But that's great. So you were coaching yourself in real time, recognizing you were doing the very thing you preach against, and then you coached yourself with advice that you've given to others.
Also, totally didn't know what I was doing. I'm not a veterinarian. I've only ever pulled ones out that just came out stillborn. Like this was suck. Yeah,
Well,
I
good
was
for
like,
you.
well, what
That's
I
the real
know is it needs to
homestead
come out
life
of here.
right there. I thought we had our hands full with some chickens and ducks, man. Sheep and goats. Let's go. Okay, guys, exitandbuildlandsummit.com is the website. Exitandbuildlandsummit.com. Myself, my wife, Nicole, Joel Salatin, Daniel Salatin, River and Amani, Mike Cobb, Melanie Rubin, and others, we are going to be delivering some solid information to you about homesteading, about monetizing your land, and about leaving a legacy of liberty. Before we let you go, Nicole, Catherine Martin, the one, the only super fan, Catherine Martin has a great question. And, the quality of life that you get, it has a lot to do with the quality of questions that you ask yourself and ask others. And Catherine's got a good one here. If you were starting from scratch, Miss Nicole, what's the first business you'd start with?
I wouldn't do anything differently than I've done. And that's probably a weird answer, because if you'd asked me that a few years ago, I may have had a different answer and said the coffee. But what was my first business? My first business was being a resource to my community. And as a result of being a resource to my community, didn't make any money doing that, by the way, I became the person on speed dial for food preservation and canning questions in my county. So I started a podcast. As a result of starting the podcast, I developed a really strong community that's very positive in Tennessee. As a result of that, when I finally got the message that I love roasting coffee, which took probably 6 years for me to realize maybe I don't want to work in politics and maybe I do just love roasting coffee, which is not an intellectually hard thing to do. So, there was some pride there that was in my way because I love roasting coffee. And I had the people ready to buy the coffee to give me a pretty soft start on the coffee. But had I not done all of those other things that didn't make a lot of money, I would have never had the foundation to start making money with the coffee, which then my speaking and coaching and those sorts of things that I do out about in the community, there was more credibility because I could point to a business that's actually making money, right? Rather than this is how you make money. I'm not making money. Take advice from me, sort of thing.
Good stuff. Yeah. And that's important too. There's this expression that you dig the well before you're thirsty. So for anybody that is contemplating starting a business in the future, one of the best things you could do now is start to really lean into putting yourself out there, a podcast, YouTube videos, networking, going to events, shaking hands, striking up conversations. It doesn't have to be some big and grand thing, but you should push yourself to force yourself to focus more on building those relationships, those reciprocal relationships. And then I think, just sticking with exactly what you did is great because, you got to start somewhere. And a lot of times we get caught in the hesitation of like, what should I do? And I want it to be perfect. And I got to have the business plan and I need more advice, when in all reality, you just got to plow forward. It's not as complicated as you may think to get started. As you grow and scale, that's when complexity comes in. And if that's part of the challenge and part of the fun is to figure out how to solve this problem and grow to the next level. But getting started, the most important thing is just to take action. So I appreciate you, Nicole, and I'm glad that you're speaking at the Land Summit. I think it's going to be a great addition to the event. And we're always excited to hear all the cool stuff you got going and all the great insights that you're picking up and sharing with folks.
Oh, we're going to have a great time out there. I can't wait to see you. It's been a year since I actually saw you in person. And sometime I need to visit you when you're not running Exit and Build Land Summit. We should just have a cup of coffee.
That'd be great. Some Hollow Roast coffee.
Of course.
All righty. Are my coupon codes still active, you think, for folks?
Yes, but your affiliate code needs a redo because I just last week had a plugin meltdown and I'm about to launch a different plugin.
Oh, that's always fun. Well, either way, folks, hollerroast.com is the website. That's HOLLER, right? Hollerroast.com. Great coffee. And I don't know if there's a gift coming my way, but I need to pick some up sooner than later.
There's a gift coming your way in Swoop, Virginia.
Sweet. It's good. It's good. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate you. exitandbuildlandsummit.com is the website to join Nicole and I at the Land Summit. All right. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Nicole Sauce of Living Free in Tennessee podcast and the Living Free podcast and Holler Roast as well. Self-Reliance Festival. She is a jack of many trades. Hey, guys, I hope you like the program today. We're rocking and rolling, moving and grooving every Wednesday at 11 a.m. for now. Now, if we do, I shouldn't even raise any confusion, but if we do keep it live, which we likely will, we're going to be changing the time at least because I want to tap into Bradley Logan's PLA membership. Guys, we did this private realm, no tax, opting out of the beast system through private realm activity webinar. The replay's still up. It'll just be up for the next few days, though. So you can watch it if you didn't sign up. livefree.academy/no tax. You'll get instant access. livefree.academy/no tax. You'll get instant access. If you're somebody that's still relying on politicians to solve your problems, if you're somebody still putting your trust in old Donald, I tell you what, I have learned a lot from the Donald. There was a period when I was a little bit more excited about him. I knew that he was authoritarian and tyrant, but I was still like my adoration for Elon Musk. Not a fan anymore. It's pretty clear I should have listened to everybody. I'm humble enough to admit it. He does make some great products, but I learned a lot from him as far as scaling, getting stuff done, entrepreneurship, just like work ethic. And I've learned a lot from Donald Trump, too. Read The Art of the Deal, watched every documentary that you can find on the guy, studied him. One of my favorite marketing gurus, Dan Kennedy, is a big student of the Donald. There's a lot to learn from the guy on getting shit done. I mean, he is the president of the United States, even though he's a tyrant, even though I don't think he's consciously directing it of his own accord. I think that he is being manipulated because it's probably easy to manipulate him because he's such an ego freak. So let that be a lesson to everyone, not to allow our desire for fame and power to allow others to manipulate us because of that, or manipulate ourselves at the expense of our principles and values. But the Donald is somebody that I've learned from. But at the same time, guys, he's part of the agenda, whether conscious or unconscious of it. The technocracy is marching on. It's up to each and every one of us to step into our power and take 110,000% responsibility for the life that we live. That's our destiny, ladies and gentlemen. We've lost our way, but we've found it. We've regained our self-esteem and self-confidence. We're setting our ego aside, but we're believing in ourselves, and we are plowing forward together as a community. I want to thank you for being part of the Live Free Now show. Until next time, my friends, stay free out there. Thanks for tuning in.